On today's program, ICEJ President Dr. Jürgen Bühler introduces the Pioneer of Christian Zionism series. ICEJ Canada Arise Director Philippe Bedard preaches on the Sea of Galilee. And Shmuel Younger of Christian Friends of Israel Communities speaks to Canadian youth at Westwood Community Church in British Columbia.
Hi, I'm Donna Holbrook, National Executive Director of the International Christian Embassy, Jerusalem in Canada, and I want to welcome you as our viewers. We're in Capernaum for the 42nd Feast of Tabernacles with the ICEJ, and we are here with all the nations. And you're watching online perhaps, and for even more nations who couldn't come in person. But we have 2,000 pilgrims here. We had opening night on the Galilee. It was sensational. We joined people from ICEJ, Ireland, Zimbabwe, USA, all over. And our brothers and sisters are here. They're having a wonderful time, some for the first time and some for return trips, and many Canadians. So being where we're in the ministry of Jesus right here, where 70% of his ministry was done in on these shores of the Galilee. And I just want to thank you as our friends and our listeners that one day, if you haven't been here, that you will come with us and partake. Thank you.
Joel chapter 3, verse 16. The Lord also will roar from Zion and utter his voice from Jerusalem. The heavens and the earth will shake, but the Lord will be a shelter for his people and the strength of the children of Israel.
The restoration of the nation of Israel is one of the greatest miracles of our time. For many centuries, Christians foresaw through biblical promises this exciting event. They spoke, wrote, and taught about this future restoration. Today, they're called Christian Zionists. This is their story.
It is important for us to understand that Christian Zionism didn't emerge in the last century or started with organizations like the Christian Embassy or similar pro-Israel organization, but Christian support for Israel has its roots that is going far longer back. As a matter of fact, it started with the time of Reformation. The most singular event that brought forth the teaching of Christian support for Israel was the translation of the Bible in a modern language. It was first German, later on the King James Version in the United Kingdom. And for people to be able to read the Bible, they very quickly realized that what the church was teaching them, the Catholic Church, they couldn't find those doctrines in the Bibles. And one of those doctrines was the teaching about Israel, that God is finished with the Jewish people, that there is no future for them, that the church replaced Israel. People started to read the Bible and says, wait a second, we can't find that anywhere in the Bible. On the contrary, the Bible is full of promises about a future restoration. So in 1588, a gentleman, right after the Bible was translated, called Francis Catt, he wrote a book where he for the first time expressed the idea that the Jewish people are really a people here on earth. Israel is still the land of Israel today, and one day the Jews would return there. And this was a shockwave in Christian theology because he was immediately declared as a heretic. 2 years later, he was burned on the stake, but this unleashed a wave that couldn't be pulled back anymore. A decade later, in 1610, another theologian, Thomas Brightman, wrote a very similar book where he stated exactly the same. The Jewish people are God's people still today, and God is going to restore them. And there were many other books that were published like that. It is important to understand that people like Francis Catt, Thomas Brightman, and others which were around, they were not those singular specks in the theological sky, but they were developing what became the mainstream of evangelical theology. One of the greatest revival leaders of the 17th and 18th century was John Wesley, who ushered the Methodist revival in the United Kingdom, a revival that literally changed the entire island of the UK, and it also spread over to the United States of America. He was an absolute convinced theologian that the Jewish people have a destiny, that God would restore restore them. As a matter of fact, in his commentaries to Romans 11, he writes that if there is something promised in the Bible, it is that God would restore the Jewish people back to their homeland. And then he adds, he says, therefore I wonder how many people still cannot understand that mystery. That means he fully put himself behind that understanding, and it didn't stop with him. It was also a century later. They call him the Prince of Preachers, Charles Spurgeon, and he was one of the greatest orators in the United Kingdom at that time, in the London Metropolitan Tabernacle. And he, whenever he expounded on the Old Testament, which he did very often, by the way, he always referred to those Old Testament prophecies like Ezekiel 37. He says those dry bones, they are actually written in the context that God one day would restore the Jewish people. And today I'm going to give you a spiritual application. I will give you a spiritual message. And he did this many times. There is even an entire message from Charles Spurgeon where he spoke about the future restoration of Israel. He said they will have a king, they will have the land where they are living, they will restore the ancient cities. He in a way foresaw everything that we are seeing today happening here in the land of Israel. I don't think we can overestimate their role for Christian Zionism even today, because they were the first ones who really formulated the notion or the thought that God would restore the Jewish people. They were the first ones in the post-Reformation period, which says God has a future and a calling for the Jewish people. In a way, we have to say we are standing on their shoulders today. We are reaping about their thoughts, about people even paying with their lives for this understanding and for this truth. We are today sitting on their shoulders. And I think it's important for us also to understand that this is even understood by many here in Israel. I never forget when Prime Minister Netanyahu was visiting the Christian embassy a number of years ago. He said, you Christians, you were the very first Zionists. You understood Zionism before we Jews understood it. And it's quite amazing to see that there was an understanding in the church of the restoration of Israel long before the Jewish people developed their own Zionist understanding.
1 Thessalonians chapter 1, verses 6 through 8. And you became followers of us and of the Lord, having received the word in much affliction, with joy of the Holy Spirit, so that you became examples to all in Macedonia and Achaia who believe. For from you the word of the Lord has sounded forth, not only in Macedonia and Achaia, but also in every place. Your faith toward God has gone out, so that we do not need to say anything.
How many of us are grateful to be on the Sea of Galilee today on the boat? It's really beautiful, right? Amen. It's such a privilege to be on the sea where it's surrounded with sites where Jesus visited, where Jesus healed the sick, where Jesus called his disciples, where Jesus walked on the water. And today I actually want to speak about that. So it's funny that, well, it's fun. I mean, it's one of the classic stories, but it's fun that it was mentioned every single time that we were talking about us going to the Sea of Galilee, talking about Jesus walking on the water. And I know that most of the time we approach this place as, okay, we're going to talk about Peter walking on the water and having faith and then doubting and drowning. But today I specifically took Mark in order to remove the story of Peter and focus on something else. So let me just read the text here, and I'm going to explain some things along the way, and then after that I'm going to come to a conclusion. I'm going to try to do it quite fast. So the text is found in Mark 6 verses 45 until 52. All right, so if you have your Bible, you can follow along. Otherwise I'll read it, and I think I can read well, so you will understand, I'm pretty sure. So immediately after this, so this is right after Jesus multiplied the bread and the fish to feed the 5,000 people. The Bible reports this following story. Immediately after this, Jesus insisted that his disciples get back into the boat and head across the lake to Bethsaida. While he sent the people home, after telling everyone goodbye, he went up into the hills by himself to pray. Late that night, the disciples were in their boat in the middle of the lake, and Jesus was alone on land. He saw that they were in serious trouble, rowing hard and struggling against the wind and waves. About 3 o'clock in the morning, Jesus came toward them walking on the water. So I'm going to just stop here for a moment. So remember that that first story in Genesis when God creates everything. It is said that the earth was not formed yet, and there was water all over the globe, and the Spirit of God was hovering over the water. This is sort of an image that is seen in this text where this is chaos. There's a storm happening on the sea. The disciples are quote-unquote perishing, if you will. There's wind, probably a lot more wind than this, probably a lot more waves than this. As our friend Harrison said earlier, sometimes the storms can become quite crazy on this lake. And yeah, so there's this image of utter chaos where the disciples are afraid, where something is happening, where they don't have the control, where they think they will die and everything. And Jesus sees them from the top of a mountain and decides to go walk on the water towards them. And then, so just remember this, that the word or even the interpretation of a sea with a storm would be the interpretation of something chaotic, something that is not going well, something that is like situation completely out of control. So, after that, Jesus came towards them, walking on the water. He intended to go past them, which is kind of funny when you think about that. Like Jesus was like, yeah, I'm just gonna walk past them and whatever, you know? He intended to go past them, but when they saw him walking on the water, they cried out in terror, thinking he was a ghost. So not only the sea is like going crazy and they're in utter chaos, now they see something and they're like, oh no. Like, so there's also a ghost on the water. So there's a storm and a ghost. Twice as scary, right? So what I want to point out here is to say that even if it's utter chaos, the disciples should not be afraid and should be courageous. Why? Because Jesus is going to calm the storm? No. Because Jesus is with them. Because Jesus is there. Because the great I am. Because God himself is with them. So whatever is happening in our lives, like I know some people of us have lost our luggages. Some other people are living through a very difficult situation, maybe in this moment, even in the past few weeks, past few months, past few years. And sometimes we put our hopes in thinking that, oh, I'm going to feel better, everything's going to go better when things are resolved, when things are going better. But the text here says, do not fear, do not be afraid, take courage, for the I am is here. Do not be afraid. Take courage. God is with you. And we don't find comfort in the situation being resolved. We find comfort in the fact that God is with us in the mess, in the chaos, in the storm, in the loss, in the pain, in every situation that you can think about that could have such a description. So I just want to encourage you, and what is very interesting is that right after saying that, the text says, then he climbed into the boat, so he went with the disciples, and the wind stopped, and they were totally amazed. So, my invitation for us today is, let's not be afraid, and let's take courage in the hope that we are with God, and that God is with us.
Thank you for joining us today. And be sure to visit our website at www.icej.ca or call us at 1-866-324-9133. And for our Canadian residents, be sure to ask for your free Canada-Israel pin. Through your contributions to ICEJ Canada, you can participate by giving to Haifa Home for Holocaust Survivors, Women at Risk Red Carpet Project, Operation Life Shield Bomb-Proof Shelters, Mentoring Programs, Aliyah Support, Children's Projects, Israel in Crisis, Israel Aid, Magan David Adam Emergency Services, Christian Friends of Yad Vashem, Scholarships for Young Adult Leaders, ICEJ Canada Media Fund, Gift Estate Securities Fund.